By now you've probably figured out that it isn't really possible to do full-fledged 3D modeling inside of Photoshop. You'd have to use a dedicated program to produce the 3D simulation and then bring in the artwork for further special effects in Photoshop. You can use applications like Adobe Dimensions, Carrera, or Raydream Designer by Meta Creations, etc. You'll have to create the 3D forms, save the artwork as TIFF files, and then import them into Photoshop for further texturing, etc. That said, there are a few ways to produce a quasi-3D rendering in Photoshop and with the help of some third-party filters. One filter called 3D Transform is built into Photoshop. Firstly, don't expect too much from this. It's good for mocking up package design in my opinion, and you'll see why. Choose Filter, Render, 3D Transform. First, in Options, I like to set the resolution and anti-aliasing to high to get the best results. Also, turn off Display Background so we can get a better look at how it works. Then choose the geometric object that you wish to have the image or a part of the image wrap around. There's the Cube tool, the Sphere tool, and the Cylinder tool. Let's start with the Cube. You also have access to navigation tools and shortcuts for panning and zooming. First, click and drag to form the cube shape around a part of the image. Then you can make changes to adjust the orientation and shape. Field of view determines your view and how many sides it'll display. The pan camera will allow you to move the object in your view area. The dolly camera lets you zoom closer or further away, just as in movie making. And the trackball tool is where it begins to click, in my opinion. Imagine you have a box of cereal that you have to wrap an image around in your mock-up stage, and you want to nudge the view just a little bit on either side to see what it looks like from a slightly adjusted angle. And there you have the greatest use for this feature. Notice that it presents a blank gray for areas that do not have any imagery. And that's 3D Transform in a nutshell. It produces similar results when used with the spherical or cylindrical tools. On a slightly advanced level is the Andromeda Series 2 3D filters. This program inside of Photoshop lets you wrap images around an expanded list of shapes. You have the cylinder, box, plane, and sphere, and produces very good quality artwork as its bonus. The interface can seem a bit intimidating at first, but let's take a look at some of the functions. You've seen the perspective effect of an entire screen angle to the background, and this is one way to create it quite easily. First, select Viewpoint and set up the exact orientation using these controls on the right. The distance fields, functions like the dolly camera in 3D Transform. In order to position the plane exactly right, you can experiment with the rectangular, cylindrical, and spherical axis choices at the very bottom. Of course, if you've really messed up, you can click on Defaults and check all settings for the surface and click OK. To resize the plane surface to map to the image, click on Auto Size, or move the sides marked with left, right, top, etc. You have the ability to preview the settings as you go along. You can also set up grids on the surface and/or the photograph. And set up the spacing for the grid lines. Shading lets you add additional lighting to produce very subtle effects. Experiment with the various shape axes to set the light source. To change the colors, click on Colors and set the RGB values to the right. Let's see what this produces. And we'll explore one other option to give you a further idea of how this works. To use the cereal box packaging metaphor, the black lines on the cube form is the image, and you can use the controls to form the shape and orientation of the box. To change the way the image or photo is draped over the box, click on Photo, and then shift and scale to the right. Use the horizontal and vertical axes and angle to position the art. Use the scale setting to scale along the axes or overall. While it would have been nice to have a more dynamic editing routine, this is the next best thing, I suppose. And here you can see how the artwork appears on the box at the specified angle and orientation.